There was this parents who had a 2-year-old, so they were afraid for his safety. They live on a second floor. They have two-story house. So they put a fence near the stairs, at the entrance of the stairs, so that the child wouldn't fall down the stairs. And so then they became more afraid because the child became more active as he grew older, and they didn't want the child to hurt himself at hit the TV cabinet. So they put a fence around the TV cabinet. They didn't want the child to climb up the sofa and then fall, so they put a fence around the sofa. And they kept doing it. As the child grew older, they kept doing it. Finally, they were so afraid that the child would hurt himself, they were so paranoid, that they put him in a fenced area where it's 3 by 3 meters. 3 meters by 3 meters, and they said you can only stay here. They were restricting his freedom. See, God did not intend to give us the laws to restrict our freedom of movement. In fact, He wants us to enjoy this life. He gave us the laws as boundaries that we're not to cross, because when we cross them, we will not be able to enjoy life. We will not be able to live happy lives and actually enjoy God's presence. God knows what's out there in the spirit world, and He knows what would happen, the traps that Satan has placed for us. And so He says, if you go beyond these boundaries, you would fall into the trap, and it would be harmful to your souls. So the boundaries that God gave us in the form of the laws were actually meant for us to enjoy life, not for us to be burdened and restricted from living a joyful and abundant life. The Pharisees, teachers of the law, they made it so burdensome for the people that they started adding more laws to the law that God had already given them. So like the Sabbath, God says don't work on the Sabbath, and then they started adding more laws to that, saying that you shouldn't even pluck fruit from the tree, you shouldn't heal anybody on the Sabbath day, they shouldn't even carry a mat, and all those things. And that's not what God intended. God intended that these laws were meant to be boundaries, but did not mean that you cannot help people. It does not mean that when people are in need, that they cannot do certain things within that boundary. When somebody is hungry and is walking somewhere, it doesn't mean that they can't pluck the fruit. Would they die just because they want to obey the Sabbath law? When somebody is in need, don't you help them on the Sabbath law, even if it means like they have to carry something? They had all these ridiculous laws that says you cannot carry things with certain weight, and you cannot walk certain amount of length. So all this became burdensome. So the people felt burdened. Instead of enjoying God and understanding God through the laws and understanding His character, they saw God as somebody who was distant, who just wanted them to be burdened. And they felt like, how can we know God? It's so difficult. And so there was all this classification. If you don't do this detailed laws that they had added, called human tradition or the tradition of the elders, then you're a sinner. And then, so they were like, how can we be sinners? It's like so many people were sinners at that time, considered as sinners because they didn't do the things that were written in the human tradition. So we see here that Jesus' disciples were taking fruit out of a tree because they wanted to eat, and they were being judged as breaking the law of the Sabbath. And then Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath, and they were questioning Him, why are you doing that? And then we also see in chapter 7 that we actually reading that Jesus was talking about the tradition and God's commands. They were mentioning to Jesus, why are your disciples not washing their hands before they eat? It wasn't written in the law, but they added it up just to make things more burdensome for people. So we have to understand this. God's laws were not meant to bring burden, but it's actually meant to bring boundaries where we could enjoy life, that we should not go beyond that boundary. What the Pharisees did was they were making the boundary smaller and smaller, the boundary lines, and people felt so suffocated by religion at that time. And we don't want that to happen to us. You know, like the New Testament says that we are to dress modestly, especially like it's meant for women at that time. Okay, I'm not being sexist here, but I'm just using as an example. Even men have to dress modestly. But let's say for women, what does it mean to be modest? Dress modestly. Does it mean like if somebody would make a rule out of that and say, okay, you have to wear sleeves all the way until your elbow? Somebody might say, no, not up to the elbow, it should be longer. And then the skirt should be up to the knee. Somebody said, no, not up to the knee only, it should be all the way up to the ankle. Those are additional human traditions, and we may say this is what God approves. It should be up to the ankle. And God never said that. He said, dress modestly. And we have to look at different circumstances to interpret that. So we don't want to add burdens to people. You know, these are meant to be boundaries, and it's meant for us to enjoy life. God bless you.